Sarah was 20 years old, a quiet girl with deep brown eyes that always seemed to hold unspoken emotions. She lived in a small town called Maplewood, a place where the streets were lined with towering oak trees and the scent of fresh bread from the local bakery lingered in the air. The town was peaceful, but in Sarah's heart, a storm raged. She lived in a modest two-bedroom house with her mother, Linda, a hard-working woman who juggled two jobs to keep the family afloat. Her father had left when she was only 8, and since then life had been a constant struggle. Despite this, Linda never let her children go to bed hungry, even if it meant skipping meals herself. Sarah had 2 younger siblings, her sister Emily, who was 15 and full of dreams, and her brother Noah, who was only 10 but already had a mischievous spark in his eyes. Sarah loved them more than anything, often acting as a second mother to them while their real mother worked late into the night. She had spent most of her teenage years sacrificing her own desires for her family. College was a dream she had buried deep within herself, knowing they couldn't afford it. Instead, she worked at a local cafe pouring coffee for strangers while wondering if she would ever get the chance to change her fate. But tonight was different. Tonight, she sat by the small window in their dimly lit living room, her hands gripping an unopened envelope. It was from a university, one she had applied to in secret, using saved-up tips from her job. Her heart pounded as she traced the edges of the envelope with trembling fingers. Would this letter bring her freedom, or would it confirm her fears that dreams were not meant for people like her? A tear slipped down her cheek, carrying with it the weight of years spent longing for something more. Sarah took a deep breath and slowly opened the envelope. The paper inside felt crisp between her fingers as she unfolded it. Her eyes scanned the words quickly, then stopped. "We are pleased to inform you." Her heart skipped a beat. She reread the sentence, her breath catching in her throat. She had been accepted. For a moment, time stood still. The weight of years of sacrifice, of long nights helping Emily with homework, of waking up early to make breakfast for Noah, of watching her mother come home exhausted. Everything flooded her at once. She had made it. But then reality struck just as quickly. How could she leave them? Who would take care of Emily and Noah? How would her mother manage alone? The excitement in her chest twisted into guilt. She clenched the letter in her hands and wiped her tears away. "Sarah!" A soft voice came from behind her. It was Emily, rubbing her sleepy eyes. "Why are you crying?" Sarah forced a smile. "It's nothing, just tired." Emily walked over and sat beside her. She looked at the letter in Sarah's hands and frowned. "What's that?" Sarah hesitated before handing it to her. Emily's eyes moved quickly over the words, and her face lit up. "Sarah, you got in!" "Yeah," Sarah whispered. Emily's excitement faded when she noticed her sister's expression. "You're not happy?" "I am. I don't know if I can go." Emily frowned. "Why not?" Sarah sighed. "Because of you and Noah. Because of Mom. I can't leave you all." Emily took Sarah's hand. "Sarah, we've all seen how hard you've worked. You deserve this." Sarah shook her head. "But what about, we'll be okay?" Emily interrupted, squeezing her hand. "Mom will find a way, and I'll help more with Noah. You always take care of us. Now it's time for you to take care of yourself." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes again, but this time they weren't just tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could have a future of her own. The next morning, Sarah sat across from her mother at the worn-out kitchen table. The letter lay between them, its presence as heavy as the silence in the room. Linda, her mother, picked it up and read it again. Her tired eyes, rimmed with exhaustion from years of sacrifice, softened. "You got in," she said quietly. Sarah nodded, unable to meet her mother's gaze. "But Mom, Linda reached across the table and took Sarah's hand. "You're scared," she said gently. "I understand." Tears pricked at Sarah's eyes. "I don't want to leave you, Emily and Noah. What if something happens? What if you need me?" Linda sighed, squeezing Sarah's hand. Sweetheart, I've needed you for so long, but that's not how it's supposed to be. She swallowed hard, looking at her daughter with both pride and sorrow. I never wanted you to carry this much weight. I let you because I had no choice. But now you do have a choice. Sarah looked down, her heart aching. But how will we afford it? Linda exhaled slowly. We'll figure it out. There are scholarships, grants. Maybe I'll take on an extra shift. Mom, no, Sarah protested. Linda smiled. Don't you see? All these years I've worked hard so that you could have something better, and now it's here. You have a chance to break the cycle, to have a life that isn't just about surviving. Sarah's tears spilled over. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. I don't know how to think about myself first. Linda cupped Sarah's face in her hands, just like she used to when Sarah was little. Then let me teach you, she whispered. Go, Sarah, go chase your dreams. Let me worry about the rest. A sob broke from Sarah's throat as she fell into her mother's arms, holding her tightly. For the first time in her life, she allowed herself to believe she was allowed to want something for herself. For the first time, Sarah felt like her tears were not just of sorrow, but of hope. Days passed, and Sarah kept the letter tucked away in her dresser, unsure of what to do. But one evening, as she sat alone after her shift at the cafe, she received an email. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Congratulations! You have been awarded the Maplewood Future Leaders Scholarship, covering full tuition, housing and expenses for your undergraduate studies. Sarah gasped, reading the words over and over again. It was as if the universe had been waiting for her to take a leap, and now it had given her wings. The next morning, she ran home and burst through the door. Mom, Emily, Noah, she called. Her mother rushed out of the kitchen, worry etched on her face. What is it? Sarah handed her the phone with the email open. As Linda read, her face transformed from confusion to shock and finally to pride. You did it, Linda whispered. You really did it. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, but this time they weren't from fear or doubt. They were tears of joy. Sarah left for college that fall, her heart heavy with the thought of leaving home but filled with determination. She worked hard, excelling in her studies. She studied political science, driven by a passion to change the world, not just for herself, but for families like hers, for the people who struggled, who felt unseen. 4 years later, Sarah stood on the stage in her graduation gown, looking out at the crowd. In the front row, her mother, Emily, and Noah sat, cheering the loudest. She did it, but she didn't stop there. She applied for a master's program, earning another scholarship, and pursued a degree in public policy. Through sleepless nights and endless studying, she never forgot where she came from or the sacrifices her family had made. Years later, Sarah stood on a different stage. But this time, it wasn't a graduation. She was giving a speech. She had just been elected as a state representative, the youngest woman in her district to ever hold office. As she looked out at the audience, she saw her mother, older now, but still beaming with pride. Emily, now in college herself, sat beside her. Noah, a teenager, waved at her from the front row. Sarah took a deep breath and spoke. I once thought dreams were too far away for people like me, that survival was all life had to offer. But I stand here today because someone believed in me, because I found the courage to believe in myself. The audience erupted in applause, but Sarah's eyes went to the 3 people who had been with her through it all. Sarah's tears had once been of sorrow. Now they were tears of victory.